Good morning. My name is Emma Livingston, and I use they, them pronouns. I am a member of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Amherst and of our worship collaborative. Welcome to old friends and new, young and old, in the Zoom and in the sanctuary. You are an essential part of our celebration today. Whether today is your first or your 1000th Sunday in our midst, we are stronger because you are with us. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. Today, we will hear a message of greeting from the UUA co-moderators and reflect on change and the new year. We will hear from Ann Perkins and Adele Franks about our dedicated offering organization for January, the Local Energy Advocates. And there will also be an opportunity for spoken joys and sorrows. I call us to worship with these words from Monica Jacobson Tennyson. What is it that gives you the power to make that change, to ask that question, to take that journey? What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you up in hard times? It is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truths, this air, our hearts. Come, let us worship together.
We light this chalice on the brink of a new year, letting go of what has been, open and hopeful for what may come, renewed, restored, ready to live life fully anew. May we move forward with intention. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Most of the kids are already here at front, but I'm going to invite the rest of the kids who would like to come and sit up front to come on. So with a new year, we are starting a whole new curriculum in religious education. And it is called Moral Tales, which I'll admit does not sound like the most exciting thing in the world. But it is kind of a fun curriculum. We're going to hear stories from around the world, and we're going to talk about how those stories can apply to our lives and how those stories can apply to this is my son Lyndon, for anyone who doesn't know him, and how those stories can apply to our Unitarian Universalist principles and sources and our lives. So today, we're going to start out by telling a story here in the sanctuary that most of you have probably heard at least some variation of. And this is a story called Stone Soup. But it's probably not the version that you've heard before. Some of you may have read it in a book. Some of you may have heard it on a storytelling podcast called Circle Round. Some of you might have heard the story as a play. And so this is a version that was written by the World Food Project. And I invite you to sit back and listen as if this is the first time you have heard this story. So once upon a time, just as the sun was setting, 3 weary travelers came to the edge of a town. Their feet were blistered and their mouths were dry and their bellies were aching with hunger. "I'm starving," moaned the first. "I'm exhausted," groaned the second. "Let's stop in this town and ask for help," said the third. Now, the people who lived in this town, they were not rich people. And what little bit of food they had, they kept for themselves. They hid it even from their friends and neighbors. When they looked out of their houses and saw those 3 travelers, they said to each other, "Look, hungry strangers, we know what they want. Quick, let's hide all of the food and pretend that we have nothing." And that is exactly what they did. The travelers came to the first house, and they knocked on the door. Can you guys knock? "Good day, and peace be with you," said the first. "Will you please kindly share with us just a little bit of your food? And maybe a corner of your floor where we can sleep for the night? We don't need much room. We'll tell you all about our travels in return." "Sorry, we gave all of our spare food to the travelers who were here last week. And there's only room in this house for our family. There's no more room," said the man's wife. Both of them were lying. The travelers sighed and went to the next house. "Go away," said the owners. "The harvest was very bad this year, and every bit of food we had was gone." They too were lying. At every house, the answer was the same. The townspeople always found an excuse. Their children were sick. They had relatives staying. They were going away. A plague of mice had eaten all of their grain. One lie after another. The travelers knew that they were being lied to. Yes, dear. But what could they do? They were just about to give up and leave town when one of the travelers had an idea. "The people here have a lot to learn," he said. "Let's play a little trick on them and teach them a very big lesson." "It's an excellent idea," said the second traveler, "but what sort of trick? And what sort of lesson?" "Gather round," said the first, "and I'll tell you." And so in whispers and secret signs he did, and as the plan unfolded, his 2 friends nodded and grinned from ear to ear. As soon as they were ready to put their plan into action, the first traveler spoke in a big, booming voice so the townspeople would be sure to hear. "How terribly sad that the people in this town have no food. But never mind. We'll make a pot of our delicious and nutritious stone soup." Now, when they heard this, the people in the town were very curious. "How do you make stone soup?" they asked each other. "How do you make stone soup?" they asked the travelers. "We'll gladly show you," replied the first. "Follow us. Oh, and if you could bring an empty pot and some firewood with you, that would be great." And so they did. They arrived in the town square. One of the travelers made a fire. Another filled the empty pot with water. And the third placed it over the fire to boil. "And now," said the first, "for the special ingredients." And he reached into his leather sack and he pulled out 3 smooth stones. He plopped them into the pot. Plop, plop, plop. "And soon we shall have a feast," he exclaimed, stirring the pot with a big wooden spoon. Now, as rumor of the feast spread around town, an excited crowd began to gather in the square. "Just as we planned," whispered the first. After the pot of water had been boiling for some time, the travelers began to sniff the air and lick their lips. Now, no one else in that town square could smell a thing, but the travelers seemed to think it was delicious. "And now," said the first traveler, "I will taste it." And he took a spoonful of the bubbling water to his mouth, and the crowd craned forward. "It is delicious," he announced. And at this, the crowd gurgled with delight. "True," continued the traveler. "Now, some might say it needs just a little bit of salt and pepper, but apart from that, it is practically perfect." And no sooner had he said this than the townspeople sent their children hurrying home to go get salt and pepper, which the clever travelers added to the pot. After a while, the second traveler tasted the soup. He said, rubbing his belly, "These extraordinary stones do indeed make an excellent soup. Although, perhaps just a few carrots would make it even more delicious." And just then, an old woman in the crowd called out, "Now that I think of it, I may have just a carrot, maybe two." And she scurried home and came back with a whole sack of sweet, crunchy carrots, which the travelers quickly added to the soup. "I suppose the perfect stone soup should have some onions and perhaps even some cabbages, but what's the point of dreaming about ingredients that we don't have?" At this, an old man's voice was heard from the middle of the crowd. "I've got some onions and some cabbages too." And off he went, returning a few moments later with a wheelbarrow full of onions and fresh cabbages, which the travelers quickly shredded and put into the pot. I'm curious, what would you put into the soup?
Mushrooms.
What would you put in, Aaliyah?
Popcorn.
Popcorn?
Ice cream.
Ice cream.
Apples.
Apples.
Pizza.
Pizza? No. Not into it? I'm also not sure how I feel about ice cream, popcorn, apple, potato.
Corn and potatoes.
Corn and potatoes to go with the pizza and the ice cream. The travelers went off and they found, the townspeople went off and they found all of the ingredients that the travelers said the soup could use. And finally, one of the travelers tasted it and said, the soup is done. I can say that the king himself would be happy to eat this most delicious and nutritious stone soup. Now, when the crowd heard these words, they were deeply impressed, and off they ran to fetch all of the food which they had hidden earlier in the evening. Soon they returned with sacks and barrels full of tasty side dishes, soup, spoons and soup bowls, bread and drink, even sweets for after dinner. So soon the feast began, and everyone agreed that they had never tasted anything so delicious in their lives. And when the feast was over, the townspeople listened with rapt attention as the travelers told their tales from far and wide. And the townspeople told the travelers all about their lives in the town. And they never forgot how easy it was to make soup with only 3 stones. We are going to head downstairs and talk more about tales from around the world. Invite children, if you have a coat or a sweatshirt with you, I invite you to bring it because it's kind of chilly downstairs. The congregation is going to sing us out with the words.
Hello, I'm Meg Riley, co-moderator of the Unitarian Universalist Association with Charles Dumont. It was my good fortune to be dedicated into the Unitarian faith more than 60 years ago. I've enjoyed a lifetime in Unitarian Universalism in relationship with amazing people. I've served as a religious professional for almost 40 years in a variety of roles. And now serving as co-moderator is one way I can give back some of what's been given to me over the years. I have profound gratitude for this faith. I'm one of hundreds of volunteers who, along with religious professionals, are engaged in the daunting task of leading this precious faith. It's a faith filled with amazing people like you. Our gifts and our wisdom as individuals are our greatest strength. And that can also be our greatest challenge, because to join our individual strengths and create a vigorous religious movement, we sometimes need to set aside our own needs and desires and concentrate instead on what's best for others. That can feel uncomfortable. I am no stranger at seeking comfort when times are hard. Leading into the recent midterms, I numbed out with rom-coms where in the first 5 minutes, you knew who would be kissing or getting married in the last 5 minutes. In one really stressful time in my family, we binge watched together old black and white Perry Mason shows where we could, with uncanny accuracy, predict who he would defend and who actually committed the crime. It can be comforting to have some sense of control about what's happening when we don't have that feeling in the rest of our lives. But Unitarian Universalism has never been an easy faith, nor is it now a place to relax and stay separate from the pains of the world. This year at General Assembly, we'll be doing some hard work. We'll be discussing and voting about the very essence of who we are and who we aspire to be as we review the changes proposed by the Article 2 Study Commission. That section of our bylaws, Article 2, includes our purposes and our covenant to affirm and promote 7 principles. The proposed new version deepens that covenant from affirming key principles and values to living them out. We've not yet, as the board, even received the final version of this proposal, and already thousands of you have voiced your responses, ranging from wild enthusiasm for the changes to utter horror and everything in between. That's who we are. Our living faith means that even as we have different responses, we stay committed to listening to one another with respect. I look forward to our time together in June and before June as we discuss possible amendments. And I look forward to being with you either in Pittsburgh or online as we think together and vote together about who we are and who we aspire to be.
Hi, I'm Charles Dumont, a co-moderator of the UA with the Reverend Meg Riley. I am trained as a professional statistician. We have a scientific approach to change. We design experiments, we test and analyze, then something changes, and we start the process again. I like this approach to change, and I'm frustrated when others refuse to try it. The phrase, "if it ain't broke, don't fix it," grates my nerves. You never really know if something needs to be fixed until you begin to experiment. Here in our Unitarian Universalist Laboratory, a lot of change experiments are underway. The Article 2 Study Commission has invited all of us to consider an alternative way to look at our purposes and principles. We are about to have an election for a new UA president, and we continue to experiment with ways to create a General Assembly that is truly equitable to people who attend both online and on site. You are invited to be open to these changes and have some feelings. Let me share some of the ways I am thinking about change. My mother died in December last year. My spouse and I took care of her needs for most of the last 10 years of her life. She was very resistant to change, from small things like trying different foods that might improve her health, to larger things like hearing aids that would improve her interaction with the world. It was frustrating, but we honored her requests, because she was my mom. As we were planning what to do on that holiday that falls on the fourth Thursday in November, the one that's been called Thanksgiving but needs a new name, I reflected on how for many years, so many decisions for this annual gathering with family and friends was built around the needs of my mom. And this year would be different. We were going to Reno to be with my brother and sister-in-law. They like to cook. We like to cook. We were looking at different things to try. You might even call it an experiment. Then my brother sent me a note. Our Aunt Nan, my mom's sister, also lives in Reno, and my brother is always good about including her. In our younger days, Aunt Nan always made the ham. She really liked ham. But she's changed. Since she doesn't cook anymore, she's not comfortable going to big dinners. She would prefer that on that Thursday, we went to one of the local casinos and eat at the buffet. Don't try to work out the logic behind it. I responded to my brother by saying, I recognize that I'm feeling some accumulated frustration from years of catering to mom's idiosyncrasies. So it's not about Nan and her needs. I just need to take a few breaths and reflect on being thankful that we will be together. So this is where I have landed. I am trying to change myself, so I have more empathy to those who are resistant to change. And what about all these changes at the UUA? Changes to Article 2 are a long process. We don't get the final proposal from the Commission until January. This is a great opportunity for us to think about the purpose of the UUA. We'll talk about it all spring and do some voting at GA. There may even be amendments to the proposal. So please stay engaged in the process. It's going to be hard to see President Susan Frederick Gray's term end at GA. I love Susan. I know many of you love Susan. And it's been a blessing to work with her for these 6 years. And we can also celebrate all the achievements from those years. It will be exciting to elect a new president. We are also at the beginning of that process. There will be forums throughout the spring, so please stay engaged in the election too. And please come to General Assembly, either on-site or online. Be a part of the discussions and the voting and the elections. And finally, if you are feeling some resistance to change, well, I'm going to take a couple of breaths and just be thankful that we can all be together at GA, both online and on-site.
I'll close with these words from James Luther Adams, the preeminent Unitarian theologian of the 20th century. He wrote this: "A living tradition is not bequeathed through some law of inheritance. It must be earned, not without dust and heat, and not without humbling grace. So let us, we inheritors of this precious faith, with humility and generosity, with kindness and compassion, live into all we might become. May 2023 bring every manner of blessings to you and your congregation, your community, your family, your loved ones."
I went for a walk in that liminal time between Christmas and New Year's along the Mill River in Northampton. Ice had formed around the edges of the river, and the water level had sunk out from under it. The ice that was left over was in some places suspended above the water level, and in others fallen, broken, and textured. I was amazed that there was even ice at all, considering it was about 40 degrees, and I had my coat unzipped. But I guess the river was still recuperating from that polar vortex. This walk in the woods was quite different from the last time I had been at the end of October. Then the foliage had passed its peak, but bright maple leaves still littered the path with their brilliant yellows and reds. This time the seasons had made their mark in the shapes in the ice. And I'm sure by now, with all the rains we've had, all those beautiful ice forms I saw have melted away and are now nourishing the waterways downstream. There will be plenty more opportunities for change this year. Like our co-moderator said in the video, this year provides an opportunity for change in our own Unitarian Universalist Association and how we think about what brings us together in community. So it will be important to hold on to what grounds us and holds us steady, to remember the core of why we're here and the values that hold us together. We have seen time and time again that we are adaptable and resilient to change. And if it doesn't feel right, we can always try again. Change also brings us an opportunity to imagine and dream and grow and bring us a bit closer to being the people we aspire to be. This time of year often brings about goals. Now, I've never been one for resolutions, but I do always appreciate the opportunity for what feels like a fresh start. Instead of a lifestyle overhaul, I am taking this fresh start to notice, what from last year do I want to bring with me into the new year? What is it time to let go of? Where do I want to rest my focus? A lot has changed in the world since this time last year, and I learned a lot about how to meet my own needs through all of it. I'll be bringing with me the foundations I built in 2022 for stability and grounding. And 2023 brings another opportunity for me to try to hold more space for what is important to me. So, my goal for this year is to really listen to my body when I need to move or stretch or rest, to trust the signals it sends me, and to go at the pace I need. Along that path by the river is a labyrinth made of stones and fabric flags with messages of gratitude hung up between the trees. These have been maintained by a nameless group of keepers for many years. The flags have messages that are written by passers-by, fade over time, and get replaced with new messages. Back in October, I left a flag. When I was there again in December, there were flags I hadn't seen before, and some I remembered from the last time I was there. I was reminded of the reasons I was grateful back when I wrote my flag, and enjoyed that message alongside the new ice formations. Maybe I'll go back in the spring when all the trees are starting to bud and the earth starts to wake up again. Maybe by then my October message will have faded beyond recognition, or maybe not. But when I go back, I'll remember what brought me out there in each season and appreciate what the walk has to offer. We go forth into this new year with the knowledge that we have the strength to carry us through and the community to guide our way. May it be so. Please rise, embody your spirit, and join me in singing hymn 350, The Ceaseless Flow of Endless Time.
This is Good morning. My name is Gene Herman. I'm a member of the pastoral care team. Now is the time in our service where those who are here can come forward and share a personal joy or sorrow with the community. For we believe that there is no sorrow that is not halved or lessened by sharing it with people of good faith. It's also an opportunity to stay connected as a community, and of course, hearing a joy is wonderful. It's just a hoot. We also believe that we benefit by expanding our compassion to those in the community, and of course, truly listening and honoring the dignity of those gives by listening to their life experiences and gives, lost my train, gives value. It honors the first principle of honoring worth and dignity of every person.
May nothing cross his doors, and may virtue never cry above these windows, make a roar, and rain go by. But they may strong the rafters will, withstand the battering of the storm. This heart through all the world fragile will keep you warm. He shall walk softly through these rooms, touching our lips with holy wine, till every casual corner blooms into our shrine. With laughter round and shout, and though these sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep hate out and hold love in.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now I invite you to rise and place your hands over your hearts, or reach out for the hand of the person beside you as we sing our closing song.